This is Whitley Strieber, and this is Dreamland. You have reached the edge of the world. Today on Dreamland, we're going to go a step beyond the strange sounds that have been recorded around the world since March of 2011. Now, there are strange explosions, some of them metallic sounding, coming from underground, others apparently too long to be sonic booms coming from overhead across a large area of the central United States, possibly other places in the world too. And if you're hearing such sounds in other parts of the world, please do let us know. For subscribers, physics expert Ralph Steiner and I are going to go beyond reporting this and speculate about what it might be, because it's very clear that none of this is explained, not the strange sounds that people have been hearing and recording around the world, and not the strange booms that are being heard from both underground and from overhead in the central United States. Here on Dreamland, Linda Moulton Howe is going to give us a report on the strange explosions around the United States that includes an extremely interesting interview with a county official from Clintonville who has actually heard the sounds and is presently attempting to find some explanation. But before we get started, I'd like those of you who have not yet subscribed to unknowncountry.com, which is about 4/5 of the people listening to this broadcast right now, to really seriously consider supporting this website and this program, because there is literally no other place in the world where you're going to be hearing this material. The sounds, for example, the explosions rather, were blown off by Diane Sawyer this morning and simply laughed away. Should we be laughing about this or about so many of the other strange things that happen around the world? Supporting Unknown Country costs as little as $12.95 for 3 months. It's not expensive. It's 2 cups of coffee, 3 cups of coffee, perhaps, and that's all. And that gives us 3 months more of life. And so if you're going to continue to listen to this programming, as it gets more important, as time passes, things keep changing, we keep understanding more, and there is a chance to see something extraordinary and something very real that will be missed unless places like unknowncountry.com and programs like Dreamland continue to exist and to thrive. It's up to you. Go to unknowncountry.com, click on the subscribe tab, or don't. But please, remember this, if you don't, and we do have to end this programming, then you were part of that too. So I surely hope that you join this wonderful community. Not only is it a good thing to do, it is well worth it for all of the terrific programming you get. Back to 2004, all of the special interviews, my meditations, talks on the key, all kinds of Whitley Strieber ebooks, majestic, transformation. There is so much in the subscriber section. It is very well worth your time and money. Do it now. Linda is an Emmy Award-winning TV producer, documentary filmmaker, and the reporter and editor for EarthFiles.com, the Internet's most respected edge science website. Today, we're going into a very unusual place. What are these booms that have been laughed at by Diane Sawyer? But, I mean, what else is she going to do? People come from the night dark side, they're going to do dark things. Is that right or wrong? Of course it's right. In any case, Linda Moulton Howe has a handle on this that is real. No Diane Sawyer here. Here she is from Albuquerque, Linda Moulton Howe.
Thank you, Whitley. And people in northeastern Clintonville, Wisconsin, have been reporting earth-shaking, window-rattling booms since Sunday night, March 18th, and it went on for 4 nights into Thursday, March 22nd. Also, on Tuesday, March 20th, at 5:30 p.m. in the afternoon, no one in Clintonville knew that 80 miles southwest in Montello, Wisconsin, residents there also called police about a loud window-rattling boom, and the Montello people hadn't heard one thing about what was happening in Clintonville. 2 towns, 80 miles apart, and residents are both reporting the same jolting, loud boom. Residents there called police and said, quote, "There was a loud boom and all the windows shook. The whole house shook, but no one has an explanation. I was thinking it was an explosion, but we had no flames anywhere," said Patty Likas. One Montello resident compared the sound to a train wreck right where you are standing, and all the cars slam into each other at once. Remember that, because that is a heavy metallic sound that has been reported both in Montello and in Clintonville. Heavy, close, metallic sound. Montello Police Chief Richard Olson said, quote, "We have a lot of good, reliable sources that reported this pretty much community-wide. They reported it almost as if it were underground or at ground level. That's close. We are currently investigating it. We don't have an answer at this point. We've checked with our typical sources, such as utility companies and anybody that might be doing drilling or construction in the area, and at this point in time, we don't know what it is," close quote, the police chief in Montello. University of Wisconsin-Madison seismologist Harold Tobin said that he was not aware of any seismic readings or reports near Montello. The same was told about Clintonville by seismologists consulted there. On Tuesday, March 20th, I learned from Clintonville City Administrator Lisa Coos that as the booms persisted from Sunday night into Wednesday morning and the locations expanded further south and west from the original phone calls that were concentrated in northeastern Clintonville, she started to explain to me what she knew firsthand had happened after midnight early Monday morning, March 19th, because she was there with her city crews. Here now is Clintonville, Wisconsin City Administrator Lisa Coos.
At 1:45, crews were called in, first because of the popping type noise. We investigated our electrical substation that's in that area. There was nothing out of the ordinary at that location. Then we started to next look internally to our water and sewer system, and were able to have our local gas company, We Energies, and an A&R pipeline representative, along with city officials, to monitor any gas levels that could have been elevated because people were talking about it sounding explosive.
Could you elaborate about popping sound at 1:45 a.m. on Monday, March 19th?
People describe it as something exploded. People thought that things happened in their basement. They sound like a loud popping, an explosive type bang noise, or a series of bang, bang, bang. So because it wasn't as public at that time, nobody really knew that other people were experiencing it. People first reacted, did something happen in my basement? Did a vehicle hit my house? Did a tree fall on my house? Am I hearing thunder? Similar to those kinds of noises where it's a heavy, jolting, and jarring, banging noise and feeling for those that actually felt it. Some only heard it and did not feel it.
Mm-hmm. And for those first crews then, out after the 1:45 a.m. reports of popping and exploding, what happened? Did the crews stay out, or did they return to offices, and then you started getting a flood of more phone calls at 5:30?
No, we stayed out all night. So my police, fire, public works, and utility employees were all out together, and we created teams of people, so that police, fire, and utility with gas monitoring equipment, and we walked from one end of a street that was reporting lots of activity all the way to the other end. So it may have been an 8-block walk, and they just dropped the monitor into each manhole, and detected absolutely no elevated gas levels. And it seemed like the most intense times were from 2 to 3 a.m. And so we stayed out, continued to monitor, spoke to the school district, as there's 3 school buildings in that general vicinity, determined that we still were going to proceed with bringing the kids to school. We also monitored the gas levels in all of those school buildings, and there was no elevated levels there. Began our investigation, checking more into the water system itself, looking at the pumps, the water pressure, sanitary sewer systems at the wastewater treatment plant to see if any of our system and monitoring had looked different. There was nothing out of the ordinary at that location. As daylight came, the noises became less intense, although there were some. I know myself, I was out in the neighborhood at 8:45 a.m. that morning, and there was definitely a jolt that occurred at that time.
Could you describe it in more detail because it's your personal experience?
Both of the times that I experienced it, one was that morning and one was at 10 minutes to 10 last evening. It is clearly a banging, one instantaneous bang. In one case, I was standing on a cement sidewalk, and in another, I was standing in a large utility building. Clearly, it jolts you. It sounds like someone dropped a piece of dynamite outside of the building that you're in, or that like something sort of exploded under the ground, but it's just one large bang, and you feel it, and it's over.
What did you feel physically?
Just the fact that the earth shook. I guess I would describe it as if you were next to some sort of a construction site and a wrecking ball just did one bang into a building, or one jackhammer banging into the ground. That earthy type jolt. Not a continuous vibration, just one solid jolt.
But you had the sense that it was below your feet, below the floor?
Clearly on the cement sidewalk, it was underneath. You know, it sounded like the exploding noise, that bang, came from underneath the Earth's surface. And when we were in the building, you would have thought that something happened immediately outside the building, but you feel it in your feet. Some people report feeling things rattling, that people's lamps rattled on their tables, that their windows and doors shook.
Any sense of what it might have been?
You have absolutely no clue. That's the frustrating thing, and that you know that what you heard and felt is what everybody else feels at that exact moment. We had absolutely no phone calls late afternoon yesterday or into the early evening. And as soon as we felt the jolt at 8:10 p.m. yesterday, the phone lines lit up at the police department for the following 15 minutes, and then they stopped. So you know that everybody's experiencing the exact same jolt of energy.
Okay, so that was 8:10 p.m. on Monday evening, March 19th.
There was another large jolt at 10 p.m., and then again at 12 a.m., 1 a.m., and 2 a.m. And when we indicate that those are the times, it's based on a large volume of phone calls coming in immediately after that time to the police department.
Did the descriptions change at all?
The only thing that changed was a somewhat wider area of people calling. And so the descriptions of what was happening was not different. However, where we had sort of quantified it to the northeast quadrant of the city, it seemed to go slightly further west and south of that same quadrant. Mm-hmm. And it did not leave the northeast quadrant, so it got bigger. It didn't shift to a different area. We own our own sewer, water, and electric departments. We have monitored all those activities, all the pressure in the water system. We have tested with our pump vendor all the different pumps that service the 4 city water wells that we have within our system. Those are all functioning properly. We have checked the pressure both in the system and in the water tower. That has been found to also be functioning properly. We have dealt with experts at the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources who oversees our water system and has confirmed that nothing is consistent with the water system malfunctioning that would be creating these sort of noises under the ground. In addition, we have spoken to people within the gas We Energies company and they have been out both days to monitor gas levels in the area. We have a closed landfill to the southeast of this area. We have checked by monitoring not only the air around the landfill, but we have also taken samples, and there is no elevated methane gas coming from that closed landfill. We have a small dam that's in the middle of the community, southwest of this region. We have spoken to engineers that deal with dams on a regular basis. We have checked the actual location of the dam via GPS signals and confirmed that nothing has moved or shifted with the dam, and the dam engineers have also given us reason to believe that nothing would come from the dam. We have spoken to geologists both at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee to explain the things that are happening, and we have confirmed via the seismology monitors that are about 30 minutes away is the closest one that there's no earthquake being monitored near us. They also have looked at other geological things like earth shifting, what they call ice or frost quake. We have spoken to our county and all the counties around us regarding mining, explosive permits, any sort of mining going on in pits or anything like that where there could be man-made activity going on around us that would cause these noises to occur, and we've confirmed that that's not the case. We've spoken to the Department of Military and confirmed, although we do have a National Guard armory, that nothing has occurred there in and around our area with any planes, ammunition, anything like that. We have spoken to other engineers that have looked at the bedrock in our area, and it doesn't sound consistent with anything that they know. We've spoken to our large industries in the community to see if anything's changed over the last few days or last week or so that would be different in their operations that could be creating any of this jolting type behavior somewhere around the earth.
Have you talked with anyone about whether or not there might be some unidentified caverns or tunnels or anything underneath the area of Clintonville?
One of our local industries has a tunnel between two of their buildings. We toured that tunnel and were able to monitor the gas levels in there, which again came up with nothing. We also have discussed caverns. There's nothing that we are aware of that would be the thing that is occurring.
And where you were standing, once on the sidewalk and once on a floor, are you aware of any sort of underground cavern, chamber, basement, anything underneath where you were standing yourself?
No, I was just standing on a regular sidewalk adjacent to a public street. Based on the geologists, have reason to believe that it's got to be within the first mile under the Earth's surface. Earthquakes typically occur further down than a mile, and that is what is clearly not being registered on any earthquake monitoring devices. So if there is anything going on, it has to be within the first mile underneath the ground.
And so far, from military to engineers to seismologists to all the utility experts, mining people, no one knows of anything that is within a mile underground of the surface of Clintonville.
Nothing that would lead anyone to believe that they can explain what's been going on and why it's been happening.
As a city administrator for nearly 15 years, what is your reaction when you realize that you don't have an answer?
Based on the fact that we've spent researching as much as we have, it seems to be that the most logical conclusion is that it is some sort of natural phenomena that's occurring under the Earth's surface, and could something be shifting because of that? And we may never really have a definitive answer what has happened.
What if it keeps occurring?
If it keeps occurring, we will continue to do any additional investigation that we can, and assuming that things do not worsen, there may have to be some tolerance level to see if it gets better over time.
Is there any possibility that the United States military could have underground facilities that they do not have permission to declassify, and that when they say that they don't know of anything, could it possibly be underground military installations?
I suppose anything is possible, but I would have a hard time believing that they wouldn't, to some degree, be honest about what could be occurring.
We'll be back with this extraordinary story in just a moment. Never been to a Dreamland Festival? Considering going to one? Wondering what it's like? Well, there's going to be a Dreamland Festival May 18th to 20th in Nashville at the Scarlett Bennett Center. The whole Dreamland team, William Henry, Jim Mars, Linda Moulton Howe, Marla Freese, myself, and Anne. And with us this year, British Ministry of Defense expert Nick Pope with an incredible case that has never received any public notice before at all, of which he was the lead investigator and of which the Ministry of Defense said there were defense implications. Also with us will be Raven Dana, who had a direct, fully conscious, face-to-face encounter with a visitor in our cabin in upstate New York. Now let's listen to what a participant in an earlier Dreamland Festival thought about what it was like there. Tell us about the presentations, why don't you?
It's almost like the presentations took on a three-dimensional quality that you just don't get when you're reading this material. To have the person presenting it live gives it a level of intricacy that you don't get when you're just reading a book, and also to be able to ask questions on the spot is, again, it's invaluable.
The Dreamland Festival, as unique as this programming, as unique as the people who make Dreamland happen, as unique as unknowncountry.com. Don't miss it this year. Go to unknowncountry.com, click on the store tab, get your tickets today. Want to get 10% off the ticket price? Well, it's very simple. Here's how to do it.
Join our subscriber section today. Click on the subscribe tab on unknowncountry.com to place your order.
We're back, and here's Linda Moulton Howe.
After police dispatchers received a few more calls early Thursday morning, March 22nd, 2012, Clintonville City Administrator Lisa Coos announced that she was hiring the engineering firm Ruckert and Milka of Waukesha, Wisconsin, to install 4 ground seismology monitors around the city to find any possible epicenter underground that could be responsible for the persistent booms. Lisa Coos plans to spend up to $7,000 on the seismology monitoring investigation. But strangely, and contradicting herself after our interview at a Tuesday, March 22nd, 2012 public meeting at the Clintonville High School, and after hiring the engineering firm that day to locate the underground epicenter of the strange jolting sounds, Lisa Coos told the crowd of 400 people that she was now certain that the sounds had to be related to earthquakes, because on Tuesday, March 20th, 2012, at 12:15 a.m., 30 miles northwest of Appleton, Wisconsin, which is near Clintonville, at a depth of 3 miles, there was a small 1.5 quake registered by the U.S. Geological Survey. Now, when the Clintonville residents sitting in that high school gym heard this from their city administrator, they began to argue that they had never heard such jolting booms before Sunday night, March 18, 2012. Further, seismologists said there was no seismic link to the banging noises from March 18th to the 22nd, no seismic activity in the Montello region either, and that earthquake activity usually happens more than 1 mile deep rather than the shallow, less than 1 mile deep estimate for the banging, jolting, very metallic sounding jolts. Now, that is where we'll say that the current situation in Clintonville, Arkansas, in Clintonville, Wisconsin, and Montello, Wisconsin, is as of Friday, March 23rd, 2012. And they now have crews and video cameras and audio that they are trying to keep running through the night in Clintonville to see if they can record any of these sudden bolts and jolts and booms. But I think that it is so interesting that throughout all of this and these details of research that Lisa Coos did with all of her fellow administrators in this city in Wisconsin, that suddenly in front of that public meeting, she would say that she thought that it was related to a 1.5 earthquake when there is no other evidence coming from seismologists that could have anything to do with surface-sounding jolts that are literally shaking people in their shoes. And now let's go from Wisconsin down to the southeast to the Georgia-Alabama area, which further contradicts the idea that a 1.5 earthquake 3 miles down in Wisconsin could be the explanation for another part of the country where 3 days before the first booms were heard in Clintonville, Wisconsin, I received this email from a Brunswick, Georgia resident. Brunswick is on the Atlantic coast. Quote, Linda, this morning at around 8:28 a.m. on March 15th, a large explosion or boom was heard over Brunswick, Georgia. This boom shook windows and doors throughout the entire county. Upon further reports, it was felt from as far west as 10 miles from Waycross, Georgia, south to Folkestone, Georgia, and north to Savannah. It covered 2 counties. A local radio call-in show took calls from people that heard and felt this large event. And then it goes on to some personal details about this person in that area hearing this sound. And I went to News 4 Jax out of Jacksonville, Florida, south of where this gigantic jolt was heard over 2 counties in Georgia, and learned that it was actually 5 counties. There were 5 counties involved, and it went on between 8:15 a.m. and 8:30 a.m., and I have at earthfiles.com a county-by-county map of Georgia with red circles in each of the 5 counties where this very loud boom was heard, reported to police, television stations, radio. And there was a police officer from Georgia's Brunswick Police Department who told Channel 4, quote, it was a noise that literally shook our home. There was some panic there because, you know, when you hear that noise as far-reaching as this was, and you not only hear it but you feel it, you want to know, what is this? The 5 southeastern Georgia counties where this very large window-rattling boom was heard on March 15th lasted between 8:15 and 8:30. And then what news departments and city authorities did, they contacted the U.S. Geological Survey to find out if there was any seismic activity anywhere, and they were told no. They called up the Naval Submarine Base in Kings Bay, and they were told, quote, they were not conducting any operations that would have caused a sonic boom or explosion, close quote. Channel 4 checked with the Navy and Marines and was told by one of the divisions that there were 2 FA-18 Super Hornets flying over Georgia at the time, quote, but they were nowhere close to the speed of sound, close quote. The Federal Aviation Administration also told Channel 4 that the agency had no record of any aircraft going supersonic in the entire 5-county area on Thursday morning of March 15th. Now, the fact that those loud booms have continued over time without any explanation is increasingly troubling to affected residents. And it doesn't stop with Georgia. It moves to Alabama. When you look at the timeline, we were March 18th when things started in Clintonville. We are March 15th when these gigantic 5-county booms were heard in Georgia. Then you go back to March 6th. So we have covered a space of only 12 days. And in Alabama on March 6th to March 7th, covering the day into the night and the next day, this was a 2-county sound, and the 911 director in Birmingham and told the Birmingham News that he, as 911 director, was home at about 4:30 p.m. on March 6th when, quote, I felt the ground shaking and I heard this loud rumbling. My garage door started shaking and it sounded like it was falling down, close quote. That was in Chilton County, and next door in Bibb County, they also had several dozen phone calls to 911, all reporting a very similar, extremely loud boom that shook walls, windows, and human beings. Now, the next day, on March 7th, the Birmingham News reported that the FAA, quote, found no records of any flights Tuesday afternoon, March 6th, into that night, into the next day, that could have caused a sonic boom in central Alabama. An FAA spokesperson explained civilian planes do not fly fast enough to cause a sonic boom. Only military aircraft could do that. But a spokesman for Maxwell Gunter Air Force Base in Montgomery also said that from the military side, they had no record of any aircraft flying faster than the speed of sound in central Alabama, March 6th to 7th. And Whitley, when you boil all this down, from March 6th, we have these percussive sounds in 2 counties in Alabama that people thought were coming from the air. But it was jolting foundations and feet there. And then on March 15th, hardly a week later, we have to go to the 5 counties in southeastern Georgia. Again, enormous sound that is shaking and rattling people, walls, and windows, but the people there thought that these singular, loud, explosive booms were coming from the air. And then, on March 18th, in the night, come these jolts in Clintonville, Wisconsin, a long way from Georgia and Alabama, and went on for at least 4 nights with city officials investigating, and all of the details that City Administrator Lisa Coos gave us on what they have investigated, and that she comes down to the conclusion that because there was a 1.5 seismic event in that area, that she's saying that she's concluding that everything that's happened in Clintonville and Montello must be related to earthquakes. And I stand back from this as a reporter and say, city authorities, state authorities, and federal authorities are always reaching for the fastest, most simple explanation because they want the public and the media off their backs. But if there is any possible relationship between these boom, percussive, huge sounds, what can cover 5 counties in one boom? What could cause these massive jolts in Wisconsin? It doesn't make sense to say that it boils down to seismic activity when in less than 2 weeks this occurred from Georgia to Alabama to Wisconsin.
Linda, I have a question for you. What are you going to do at the Dreamland Festival?
A year ago at the 2011 Dreamland Festival in Nashville, I made a presentation of my evolving research into what I call ETs, time travelers, and self-activating machines. I focused around a leaked government document detailing 1980s back engineering of literally titled extraterrestrial artifacts, capable of controlling gravity, projecting 3-dimensional holograms, and invisibility. Since that presentation, I have learned much more about a Homeland Security technician's encounter with the NSA and Homeland Security agents who confiscated the technician's library book about ancient Greece and links to something called Oltesis, described as other-dimensional intelligence that has been interacting with Earth for a very long time. Along with the evolving Oltesis information has come news of huge carved limestone pillars erected in a series of circles covering acres in southeastern Turkey. Carbon dating places the age of the finely honed pillars at 12,000 years ago. Beginning secretly in 1994, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, Ph.D. from the University of Heidelberg and the German Archaeological Institute, slowly and carefully excavated the large hilltop site called Göbekli Tepe. It's about 6 miles northeast of Urfa, Turkey, near the Syrian border. Older than Egypt, older than Sumeria, and older than Stonehenge is Göbekli Tepe emerging from the hill pillar by pillar. Currently, the excavation has revealed 40 refined T-shaped limestone pillars in 4 circles 98 feet in diameter. But only 5% of the temple complex of repeating stone circles has been uncovered. Ground-penetrating radar surveys indicate there might be at least 250 more standing pillars in 18 still buried circles underneath several more acres. Who had the ability to create Göbekli Tepe, and why? Compounding the mystery is the revelation that 10,800 and some years ago, the entire Göbekli acres of standing pillars in circles were buried, covered over completely with soil. How long would that have taken? Did the makers have knowledge of impending danger? March 2012 research reported in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences says that approximately 12,000 years ago there was, quote, an extraterrestrial impact with Earth that caused the extinctions of many large North American animals, including mammals, close quote. The immense effort required to erect the many sophisticated large stone circles 12,000 years ago in Turkey and then bury them provokes speculation that Göbekli Tepe, ancient Greek structures, and stone circles all over this planet could be self-activating machines left by ETs based on Earth for millennia.
God, Linda, that's wonderful.
Thank you. I'm really excited doing this presentation.
I think it's fabulous.
Oh, and wait until you see and hear what has developed since a year ago.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Don't miss the Dreamland Festival, folks. Go to unknowncountry.com. Click on the store sales point on the upper right for the Dreamland Festival and get your tickets. It's going to be a very special and extraordinary experience. Linda, it's absolutely ridiculous because first of all, if 1.5 earthquake could create sounds like that, then this would be a very noisy planet because we have thousands of those every day all across the earth.
That's right.
So that's not the answer. Something else is the answer. And the question is, what is it and exactly what is it related to? And, there have just been an awful lot of unusual things happening recently. And I am aware of the fact that at the same time, in the first half of March, that this was going on, the world, the planet, was hit by a very exceptional coronal mass ejection, which NASA has now announced was so extraordinary that it actually heated the atmosphere. The first time a CME has done that since 2005, and in 2005, forest fires broke out all over Siberia and in parts of the United States as a result of this. So fortunately, it didn't happen this time. Or at least it doesn't seem to have. There could be fires in Siberia that haven't been reported yet. It's a very big place. In any case, I wonder if perhaps something to do with the CME caused it.
But how could something between the sun and the Earth's atmosphere be related to that very specific description in Montello and in Clintonville, where people said it sounded like, this is a quote, a train wreck right where you are standing, and all the cars slam into each other at once.
Lord, Linda, that's incredible.
Exactly, and this metallic crashing sound, this is part of a strange description that has been associated with the booms, and I think in your work at Unknown Country and in my work at earthfiles.com, we have been covering unexplained loud booms for at least 2 years. I know
yes.
These 2 years at Earth Files. And until 2012, there has not been the specific detail covering so many people. 5 counties. Whitley, what in the world would be the physical dynamic that people would feel jolts under their feet, have the impression that sound was around them in the air, but that it all happened in 5 counties at the same moment?
Well, what's so strange about this also is, if I'm not correct, these sounds that sounded like they were coming out of the air weren't sudden claps of thunder, but they were rather protracted. One man described it as shaking his garage door.
That's right.
So they weren't sonic booms then.
No, and clearly the military and the FAA, at least officially, they have excluded something terrestrial. And when you come back, though, to if you said, what is the one common denominator to 3 states in 2 weeks, it is people are trying to describe a massive jolt that is shaking and rattling, including their own feet and bodies, but not something that is going on for 5 minutes. It is something that is happening rapidly, and the residue is that walls are shaking, windows are shaking, garage doors are shaking, people are shaking, and they are traumatized. It is that loud, it is that pervasive, but it is not something like in what we'll call the strange sounds that I've done a lot of reporting about that appear to go on, like in Kiev, Ukraine, that haunting sound that I personally do not think was manufactured by anybody.
No, and there's a version of it that just appeared in San Antonio, Texas, that has elements that are very similar to Kiev.
Exactly, in that rainstorm video that I sent you.
That you sent me, yes.
Yes, and I have talked with a woman last night who heard the sound, was not the recorder of that videotape, but she is going to do some research to see if she can find the person who did the videotape. She did hear this with her own ears. She is going to listen at night. The sound that she heard was between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. She's convinced it's that same sound. And this is something that goes on for minutes, like Kiev went on for 11 minutes and 24 seconds. We are talking in Wisconsin, in Georgia, and Alabama of something so different that is affecting so many people simultaneously that is like one major, massive percussion and then nothing. And then out of the blue, another huge boom, metallic clash that shakes everything and then gone. And remember, when Lisa Coos went over the time frame, and she was out all night long on the 19th and the 20th, she stayed with her crews, that the sounds seemed to come in waves, or we'll put it this way, they came in percussive, there were like an explosion approximately every hour for 3 hours, with big gaps between those 3, trailing off, they thought, in the morning, and then at 5:10, bang, here comes another one, completely out of the blue.
Doesn't it sound like some kind of underground mining operation or digging? I mean, it really does. I checked maps of fracking activity in Wisconsin, and while these maps are obviously not completely up to date, all of the sands that are involved are over 100 miles west of Clintonville. So there's not any activity like that I know of going on in the area. And in any case, you have to wonder, I mean, maybe the sound's being projected from, I don't know what fracking sounds like. As far as I know, on the surface, it doesn't make much sound at all.
She told me in some detail about companies using names that I she asked me not to put in the report, but it related to fracking questions specifically, and that they came up with zero. No connection whatsoever, which is exactly what you're saying. And further, you must always keep in the equation the sound of cars or a train crashing with that metallic crash sound.
Which is a remarkable, frightening, specific sound. Linda, we've come to the end of Dreamland today, and hopefully you'll be back with us shortly to talk a little bit more about that. And subscribers, in the subscriber section, we're going to be speculating about this subject and getting into some really interesting material before we leave Dreamland. And Linda will be back with us another time, not in the subscriber section today. Let me read you something. The witness was changing the price signs on the gas pumps when he saw a flying triangle that stopped in mid-air. Without slowing, it stopped very abruptly, then dropped straight down out of the sky. Following this, he heard a very loud sonic boom, but saw no jet. Then he heard two more sonic booms, never seeing a jet. This is a report from September the 19th, 2001. Obviously, somebody was engaged in a UFO event where there were sounds involved, even back then. And over the years on unknowncountry.com, we have had dozens and dozens and dozens of reports of unexplained sounds. And so, folks, I'm going to leave you with this thought right now. What if something very strange and very extraordinary is getting very much closer? Linda Moulton Howe, thank you for being with us.
And thank you, and I hope that our listeners will email Unknown Country and earthfiles at earthfiles.com with any unusual sounds or high strangeness in your areas, because that's one of the few ways we can keep track and keep trying to penetrate this mystery, because it's not being covered in the so-called mainstream media.
Thank you very much, Linda Moulton Howe.
You've been listening to Dreamland. Be sure to tune in again next week. Dreamland is brought to you by unknowncountry.com and our family of subscribers. Our news editor is Ann Strieber. Our science reporter is Linda Moulton Howe. Our webmaster is Daniel Stiegel. And I'm your Dreamland announcer, Brian Arnold. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.
This is Whitley Strieber, and this is Dreamland. You have reached the edge of the world. Today on Dreamland, we're going to go a step beyond the strange sounds that have been recorded around the world since March of 2011. Now there are strange explosions, some of them metallic sounding, coming from underground, others apparently too long to be sonic booms coming from overhead across a large area of the central United States, possibly other places in the world too. And if you're hearing such sounds in other parts of the world, please do let us know. For subscribers, physics expert Ralph Steiner and I are going to go beyond reporting this and speculate about what it might be, because it's very clear that none of this is explained. Not the strange sounds that people have been hearing and recording around the world, and not the strange booms that are being heard from both underground and from overhead in the central United States. Here on Dreamland, Linda Moulton Howe is going to give us a report on the strange explosions around the United States that includes an extremely interesting interview with a county official from Clintonville who has actually heard the sounds and is presently attempting to find some explanation. But before we get started,
University of Wisconsin-Madison seismologist Harold Tobin said that he was not aware of any seismic readings or reports near Montello. The same was told about Clintonville by seismologists consulted there. On Tuesday, March 20th, I learned from Clintonville City Administrator Lisa Coos that as the booms persisted from Sunday night into Wednesday morning and the locations expanded further south and west from the original phone calls that were concentrated in northeastern Clintonville, she started to explain to me what she knew firsthand had happened after midnight early Monday morning, March 19th, because she was there with her city crews. Here now is Clintonville, Wisconsin City Administrator Lisa Coos.
At 1:45, crews were called in, first because of the popping type noise. We investigated our electrical substation that's in that area. There was nothing out of the ordinary at that location. Then we started to next look internally to our water and sewer system, and were able to have our local gas company, We Energies, and an A&R pipeline representative, along with city officials, to monitor any gas levels that could have been elevated because people were talking about it sounding explosive.
Could you elaborate about popping sound at 1:45 a.m. on Monday, March 19th?
People describe it as something exploded. People thought that things...
In the afternoon, no one in Clintonville knew that 80 miles southwest in Montello, Wisconsin, residents there also called police about a loud window-rattling boom, and the Montello people hadn't heard one thing about what was happening in Clintonville. Two towns, 80 miles apart, and residents are both reporting the same jolting, loud boom. Residents there called police and said, quote, "There was a loud boom and all the windows shook. The whole house shook, but no one has an explanation. I was thinking it was an explosion, but we had no flames anywhere," said Patty Likas. One Montello resident compared the sound to a train wreck right where you are standing, and all the cars slam into each other at once. Remember that, because that is a heavy metallic sound that has been reported both in Montello and in Clintonville. Heavy, close, metallic sound. Montello Police Chief Richard Olson said, quote, "We have a lot of good, reliable sources that reported this pretty much community-wide. They reported it almost as if it were underground or at ground level. That's close. We are currently investigating it. We don't have an answer at this point. We've checked with our typical sources, such as utility companies and anybody that might be doing drilling or construction in the area, and at this point in time, we don't know what it is," close quote, the police chief in Montello.
I'd like those of you who have not yet subscribed to unknowncountry.com, which is about 4/5 of the people listening to this broadcast right now, to really seriously consider supporting this website and this program, because there is literally no other place in the world where you're going to be hearing this material. The sounds, for example, the explosions rather, were blown off by Diane Sawyer this morning and simply laughed away. Should we be laughing about this or about so many of the other strange things that happen around the world? Supporting Unknown Country costs as little as $12.95 for 3 months. It's not expensive. It's 2 cups of coffee, 3 cups of coffee, perhaps, and that's all. And that gives us 3 months more of life. And so if you're going to continue to listen to this programming, as it gets more important, as time passes, things keep changing, we keep understanding more, and there is a chance to see something extraordinary and something very real that will be missed unless places like unknowncountry.com and programs like Dreamland continue to exist and to thrive. It's up to you. Go to unknowncountry.com, click on the subscribe tab, or don't. But please, remember this, if you don't, and we do have to end this programming, then you were part of that too. So I surely hope that you join this wonderful community. Not only is it a good thing to do, it is well worth it for all of the terrific programming you get. Back to 2004, all of the special interviews, my meditations, talks on the key, all kinds of Whitley Strieber ebooks, Majestic, Transformation. There is so much in the subscriber section. It is very well worth your time and money. Do it now. Linda is an Emmy Award-winning TV producer, documentary filmmaker, and the reporter and editor for EarthFiles.com, the Internet's most respected edge science website. Today, we're going into a very unusual place. What are these booms that have been laughed at by Diane Sawyer? But, I mean, what else is she going to do? People come from the night dark side, they're going to do dark things. Is that right or wrong? Of course it's right. In any case, Linda Moulton Howe has a handle on this that is real. No Diane Sawyer here. Here she is from Albuquerque, Linda Moulton Howe.
Thank you, Whitley. And people in northeastern Clintonville, Wisconsin, have been reporting earth-shaking, window-rattling booms since Sunday night, March 18th, and it went on for 4 nights into Thursday, March 22nd. Also, on Tuesday, March 20th, at 5:30 p.m.,